Nigeria's COVID-19 toll keeps rising. Latest tally stands at nearly 14,000. United Nations projects 13 million job losses in the country, courtesy of the coronavirus pandemic. In international news, India reports nearly 10,000 COVID-19 cases in one day. And in sport, NASCAR banned Confederation flag in support of anti-racism movement.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Nigeria's COVID-19 record swells by another 409 new cases on Wednesday. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control and CDC said Lagos recorded 201 of those cases. Abuja followed with 85. The country's total tally for the pandemic now stands at 13,873. And CDC also reports 4,351 patients have been discharged, while 382 have died. 17 COVID-19 related deaths were recorded on Wednesday, with the 85 new cases recorded in the Federal Capital Territory. Total cases there have jumped to 1,097. Total number of COVID-19 deaths recorded in the FCT now stands at 25. The United Nations World Food Programme said on Wednesday Nigeria's jobless rate could increase by 13 million as a result of the novel coronavirus. The agency's spokesperson, Elizabeth Breeze, said in a statement on Wednesday more than $182 million would be needed to sustain life-saving aid to the country over the next 6 months. Breeze also said nearly 4 million citizens, especially those in the informal sector, could lose their jobs, and the figure could rise to 13 million if restrictions on movement stay on longer. The WFP spokesperson says her agency would pay attention to conflict-affected communities in the northeast who already face extreme hunger. She said the WFP could also help 3 million vulnerable persons in Abuja, Kano, and Lagos. Coronavirus cases are increasing every day in Nigeria with no end in sight. Every tier of government has measures in place to combat the pandemic, but it appears that to ease some of the restrictions, many have grown indifferent to the virus. As correspondent Deji Badmus reports, not many Nigerians are abiding by health measures imposed to save them.
Nothing here suggests this is a city that is the epicenter of COVID-19 in Nigeria. This is a market in the heart of Lagos. Social distancing thrown to the wind. You could actually count the number of people wearing face masks or having them around their chin. Everyone here seems to be completely oblivious of a virus that has killed over 300 in the country and is still not showing any sign of slowing down. It's the norm across major markets in the city, which accounts for half of Nigeria's COVID-19 cases. And it's not just in the markets. This bus is in clear violation of the city's COVID-19 guidelines on public transportation. Commercial buses operating in the city are supposed to carry 60% of their load capacity, with all the passengers putting on face masks. But the guidelines are hardly complied with, and for some, there's a reason.
The reason we don't wear face masks is because we believe the issue of COVID-19 in Nigeria is a scam. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I don't believe it exists in Nigeria. This is my reason. When Nigeria was recording fewer cases, we were compelled to stay at home. But now that the situation has worsened and the number of cases is going up, we have been told the lockdown is being eased. So I believe it's a lie. I have my mask here, but I'm only holding onto it to avoid police harassment. I don't wear it again. I just keep it in my pocket.
As unbelievable as that might sound, it's a view held by many across Nigeria, and it's part of the reasons why many on the streets are not complying with government's COVID-19 guidelines. The situation is giving health experts serious cause for concerns. more so because Lagos is currently battling a widespread of community transmission of the virus.
If the precautionary measures are maintained, we will be able to curtail further transmission, because now we have very active community transmission, very, very active community transmission, particularly amongst the asymptomatic cases. And that has been possible because of the fact that people are not adhering to the public health instructions.
The government was very clear when it started to ease the lockdown. In addition to hand hygiene, people are required to wear face masks in public spaces, and more importantly, maintain social distance of at least 2 meters. But in a city with a land area of less than 1,000 square kilometers and a population of over 20 million, getting people to avoid each other is such a huge task.
This thing that you are using is not our culture. We are just managed to use it. And because if you use this thing, this face mask, you cannot breathe well.
As the government eases the lockdown further, people seem to be getting the wrong notion that things have returned to normal. And so they're throwing caution to the wind and reverting to their usual lifestyle. The government will no doubt need to double up on its public awareness campaign in order to really get people to begin to do what is needed to defeat COVID-19 in the city.
The former Emir of Kano, Muhammadu Sanusi II, has lost the case he filed against the Kano Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Body, in which he claims an infringement on his fundamental human rights. The case was dismissed at the Federal High Court in Kano, and the former Emir has filed an appeal. His counsels said they were not informed of the date the judgment was to be delivered, but that they have obtained and studied it. The appeal was filed on Monday, challenging the Federal High Court's decision. They say the merits and facts of their appeal are in favor of their clients, and they plan to pursue the case to a logical conclusion. It's not often one sees any effigy or banners or photos of Nigerian high officials being burned or defaced. Some residents of Yantumaku town in Katsina State did just that on Tuesday when they burned a billboard that displayed the photograph of President Muhammadu Buhari and the logo of the All Progressives Congress, APC. Banners showing images of the state's governor, Aminu Masari, were also set on fire. The angry protesters say they were unhappy about the festering insecurity in the state without adequate attention from their leaders. Just a few days ago, the district head of Yantumaki town, Abubakar Atiku Madabino, was killed by unknown gunmen. The protesters say their leaders have been negligent in curbing insecurity in their state. Coming up, African stories. Kenya's flower business hampered as flooding inundates Lake Naivasha region. And later, international news. India reports nearly 10,000 COVID-19 cases in one day.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. The South African government began a phased reopening of its economy on June the 1st, further easing COVID-19 restrictions, although some sectors like the tourism industry are being reopened with more industries scheduled to join in the coming months. South African businesses are yearning for a more accelerated reopening, and correspondent Julius Jua reports.
Here it is, a small Johannesburg hairdresser usually buzzing with clients has been shut for over 2 months. It's had no government help and bills are piling up as the lockdown drags on.
We applied for relief and we were rejected. It's extremely bad for our staff. We were trying to help them in terms of, food for the past 2 months. If we go beyond 4 months, it's going to be extremely difficult for us. We're going to have to go and maybe apply for a loan to pay the rent, and then we will have to make arrangements and take it from there.
Government widened the economy, allowing millions of South Africans to go back to work under level 3. Salons have not made the cut, but are preparing to open.
I've disinfected the salon already. I've got the sanitizers. I've got a thermometer to screen clients. At each workstation, I've got the shield mask. And on the floor, we have the 1.5 meter social distance where the clients will sit. If you look at the taxi industry, they sit so close to each other in the taxis. Why can the hair salons and the beauty industries not open up?
Once busy restaurants now also stand empty. La Boqueria's downsized kitchen staff prepare takeaway meals. Alcohol is also back on sale, but it won't be enough to curb mounting losses.
We jumped at the opportunity to do some takeaways purely because it gave some staff, albeit only 5 or 8% of the staff that were there, an opportunity to do something, because after 5 weeks of lockdown, you become quite desperate.
Government is reviewing a proposal to allow dine-ins under level 3 laws, which have been deemed unconstitutional and invalid by a court.
We can easily in this place accommodate 120 people and make sure they socially distance. So the legislation makes no sense to us. We will make sure our customers feel safe. We will make sure that our customers aren't compromised. We will make sure that the controls at ablution facilities, we will give the customers the option to re-sanitize anything that they get from us that they're not comfortable with.
Both these industries are on their knees as a result of the prolonged lockdown. If regulations aren't changed soon, many smaller businesses may not be able to open their doors ever again.
Uganda has unveiled a proposed economic stimulus package that will provide liquidity for private firms affected by the COVID-19 national lockdown. The measures are aimed at keeping companies afloat amid the economic downturn. The tourism industry, which correspondent Hilary Yesiga says has been hit hard by the pandemic, especially looks forward to benefiting from the government's plan.
Amos Wekesa is a tour operator in Uganda. He says his business has slowed down due to COVID-19.
At least 80 of my staff have gotten letters to go on forced leave, really. And it's sad, it's not their problem, but again, you can't be spending when you're not earning. So we stopped earning in February as a business.
The Uganda government has also imposed flight restrictions. Traveling to border districts is not allowed. Curfew and lodges are still closed for at least a month. This is affecting the tourism industry.
Hotel bookings have just dropped off like a cliff, like dropping off a cliff. Air travel has dropped considerably. So we expect revenues to drop, but our costs are still high.
The Uganda government earned $2 billion in tourism revenue in 2017, up from $1.7 billion in 2016. But with the outbreak of COVID-19, they are uncertain about meeting their targets. Local authorities believe the country could lose $1.6 billion in tourism earnings after the pandemic. The International Monetary Fund has also projected that Uganda's tourism earnings could fall by 54% in the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Tour operators believe that a stimulus package from government will help the industry recover. But with many countries opening up and airlines beginning to fly, they hope for a quicker return to business towards the end of the year.
Heavy flooding and heavy rains in Kenya have led to a sharp rise in water levels around Kenya's Lake Naivasha flower farms. Hotels and homesteads were flooded, and this is attributed to high siltation in the water body. Experts say the freshwater lake was becoming shallower at a rate of 3 centimeters every year because of sediments from catchment areas and ongoing projects being swept in. In the last 2 months, the lake levels have risen to the highest levels ever at nearly 1,900 meters above sea level since 1906. Lake Naivasha Riparian Association Secretary Silas Wanjala says the water body was one of the most erratic in the region.
Nature always strikes back. And it is happening to us. We can all see what is happening to the people in Kohoto. We are also seeing what is happening in the tourism sector. We are also seeing what is happening in the flower sector, that the lake is reclaiming its territory. And we must, as stakeholders in the basin, we must respect the contour of 1892.8 meters above sea level. This is our call from the duty bearers, the government of Kenya.
The rise in water levels had left a trail of destruction, flooding hotels and nearby farms at a rate never witnessed in the last 30 years. Residents are advised to protect the area through sustainable farming. When we return, international news. India reports nearly 10,000 COVID-19 cases in one day. And later, sport. NASCAR ban Confederation flag in support of anti-racism movement.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants to end the 2-meter social distancing rule by September to allow schools to fully reopen for the new academic year. MPs say the social distancing rule needs to be scrapped to avoid a further damage to the already troubled economy. The Prime Minister indicates it is important to change the rules so it could meet up with the World Health Organization standard of 1 meter. MPs, including former cabinet ministers Sir Ian Duncan Smith, and Damian Green, say it is essential for the economy. But an epidemiologist at London's Imperial College, who quit the government's crisis response team after being caught breaking social distancing rules in May, said thousands of lives could have been saved had a lockdown been imposed earlier. More than 40,000 persons in the UK are confirmed to have died from COVID-19 so far. India reported 10,000 new COVID-19 cases in 24 hours on Wednesday. Mumbai, New Delhi and Chennai are epicenters of the virus. With these infections, India is the 5th most affected country in the world, with almost 300,000 cases and 8,000 deaths. Most Indian states have lifted lockdown restrictions, with train services partially restored. Shops and manufacturing companies have already reopened. Subways, hotels and schools remain closed. U.S. total coronavirus cases have now surpassed 2 million on Wednesday. Health experts say new hotspots have emerged in some states that have reopened. Data from Johns Hopkins University reveals more than 113,000 patients have died nationwide. CNN's COVID tracking data show the number of coronavirus hospitalizations has increased in at least a dozen states, including California, Arizona, and Texas. In California, there were more than 133,000 confirmed cases and more than 4,600 deaths linked to the virus since the start of the pandemic. Health experts say huge nationwide protests with no social distancing after the George Floyd's murder could lead to another spike in cases in coming weeks. Director of Harvard Global Health Institute, Dr. Ashish Jiyad, predicts an additional 100,000 persons will die from the virus by September. U.S. President Donald Trump has moved overnight to place more fencing barricades on the White House perimeter amid nationwide anti-racism protests. New black metal walls were secured along the west and south perimeters to avoid President Trump, with an extensive security zone around the White House. Reporter Owen Flecklau tells us these metal walls are already falling apart.
More than 2 weeks ago, the death of George Floyd caused the United States to erupt in protests over racial injustice and police brutality. And US President Donald Trump threw a ring of steel around the White House to protect it. That ring of steel is starting to come down. These trucks and the machinery here are beginning to remove the concrete and steel, more than 2.5 kilometers of it, that was put right around the White House. US President Donald Trump claimed he needed to protect the downtown and government property from some of the destruction that occurred when these protests arrived on his doorstep in the wake of George Floyd's death. But many critics of the US president said he accused him of compromising Americans' right to demonstrate peacefully. But here on the north side of the White House, the area closest to the US president, you can see the White House there, the authorities don't appear ready just yet to take down this fencing. This remains the center of the focus of the protest here in the US Capitol, but as you can see, dramatically scaled down compared to those initial protests in the wake of George Floyd's death. Now, while it's true that previous presidents and previous administration have from time to time put up security like this, the scale of this is unprecedented in modern times, as were the optics of President Trump clearing these protesters away so that he could walk from the White House through Lafayette Park to that now infamous photo opportunity in front of the church here. And that was the moment that outraged not just opposition Democrats, but many people here across the United States, accusing the US president of trampling on Americans' constitutional right to demonstrate peacefully. And that's what triggered opposition Democrats to demand that President Trump reopen this public space so that people can continue to exercise their constitutional rights to protest here. The National Park Service, which runs this area, says that some of this fencing is likely to remain in place while the authorities assess the damage that was done in the initial stage of those protests, as well as remove things like the graffiti that was painted along here.
Sri Lanka will hold parliamentary elections in early August. Commission Chairman Mahinda Deshaprivo says a mock election will be held this weekend to test new health measures that will be implemented at polling booths and counting centers. The election has been postponed twice because of the coronavirus pandemic, which has killed 11 persons in the country. Sri Lanka is one of the least affected countries with almost 2,000 cases. Schools will reopen at the end of the month, and foreign tourists will be allowed from August the 1st. This is the third month without a sitting parliament in Sri Lanka.
Up next, sports. NASCAR ban Confederation flag in support of anti-racism movement. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James is starting a group with other black celebrities to prevent the suppression of the African-American vote. The group is targeted towards educating and protecting black voters, as well as energizing more to show up at the polls for the November elections. Apathy, online disinformation campaigns, and efforts to restrict voting rights have been blamed for lower black participation in the 2016 elections. NASCAR has banned the Confederate flag from its races and venues, and many believe the flag is a symbol of slavery and racism. The move comes amid social unrest around the globe following the death of George Floyd and Confederate monuments being taken down across the South, which is the traditional fan base for NASCAR. NASCAR's only black driver, Bubba Wallace, recently called for the banishment of the Confederate flag. The NASCAR Cup Series is the top racing series of the National Association for Star Car Auto Racing. The series began in 1949. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.